have entered the premises of Core Confidence Talents. We interview inspirational artists and authors from across the world. Okay, welcome to the show once again, everybody. And I am your host, Dennis, hanging out here in New York City. On today's program, we are interviewing a DJ, a hip-hop DJ, DJ Mixmash. And he's going to be here right now to tell us his story, how he got where he got, what he does, and what he will be doing. What's going on, DJ Mixmash?
Hey, man, it's a pleasure to be here, and I thank you for having me. All is well, and I'm just blessed to be here, my brother.
All right, good to hear that. Good to hear your upbeat spirit here. Good stuff. Absolutely. Yes. So, before we get into a little bit of DJ stuff, tell us about you in general. Who are you? Who is DJ Mixmash? Who's behind this?
Well, DJ Mixmash is a person who, is trying to establish himself, trying to work hard, trying to make a few things happen for himself. He occasionally likes to go out and enjoy the nice fresh air and just enjoys life as it is, Mixmash is just a person who's working hard and just trying to enjoy life and takes it day by day. And that's all we can do,
That's true. So about DJing, when did you start becoming interested in DJing? When did that start for you?
Well, I think it personally started, like I said, I went to this school, for those of you that don't know, in Philly, called Overbrook School for the Blind. And they had this field day thing. And for those of you who are blind who can't see me, I'm sitting in front of my two turntables, which equates to this story. So anyway, I'm at Overbrook School for the Blind, and they have this field day event going on. So I don't know what we're doing. I'm just walking across the room, and I stop at this little thing, and it's a box with this circular platter that spins around. And I was so intrigued by the way it spun around in circles, and I'm like, I wanted to know more about it. So I go home, and I talk to my mom, and I find out that it was a turntable. And since I found it was a turntable, that made me want to get turntables. Now, another part of it was my dad used to have cassette tapes of the New York City radio shows. Now, for those of you that live in New York City and grew up in the 1980s, I used to grow up listening to people like DJ Red Alert, Mr. Magic, Marley Marl, Tony Humphries, Merlin Bob, Funkmaster Flex, and all of these guys ran the New York City airwaves in the 80s and 90s on WBLS, WKTU, Kiss FM, and Hot 97. So that was really my first introduction into being a DJ, as well as my mother's record collection, because my mother had a record collection of her own, too.
All right. So you mentioned that you were blind, so that you're a blind DJ. And I want to get into that more a little later on. But first, sticking with what got you started. Now, there's all different kinds of DJs. So what got you involved with hip-hop? What attracts you to hip-hop DJing? What's that about?
Well, for me, what got me into hip-hop was when I heard, well, truth be told, I'm into all types of music, but hip-hop is really my heart. But I love all types of music. But what got me into hip-hop was hearing, especially Red Alert. For those of you that don't know who Red Alert is one of the founding fathers of hip-hop music. So what got me into it was hearing how Red would mix the records and how he would cut and scratch them, because unlike Marley and Chuck Chillout, they both were doing the mixing and the cutting, but Red had a different style, which made it so unique to me. And made me like, is that how the rest of those guys do it? And that's what made me want to pick up a record and scratch, per se.
And so what type of hip hop artists, other than what you just mentioned, were you following? What type of songs are you mainly into? The type of songs you mainly like to mix up? mix and mash?
Well, no pun intended. I'm into, like, if we're talking old school, I like stuff like Run DMC or Salt and Pepper or Heavy D or I'm gonna take you back. You got stuff like the Treacherous Three, which had like Kumo D, which was his first group. Uh, there was a group called the Fearless Four, who I was following at the time, and and really, a lot of those groups, but they weren't DJs, they were like rappers and MCs, and I just thought the way their voice sounded over some of them records made me like, man, it would be cool to scratch those records and hear how they sound, because that's some pretty dope stuff to me.
All right, absolutely. So you said you're all into all different kinds of music. So what other kinds of music do you mix, or do you just stick to hip hop? What's your range there?
I play everything from hip hop to house music to rock and roll, reggae, pop, R&B, break beats, which is another form of hip hop. Uh, oh man, there's a lot I play, and I make sure that with as a DJ, you have to cover all grounds for all people, because you never know who could be listening, and you never know what opportunity you could pick up from playing that different type of music.
Mm. Oh, so who got you your first turntable set to even start this?
My mom did. My mom did. She got me a pair of, I think they were Geminis. I forgot the model number, but she got me some Geminis for my 10th birthday. And that's when I started DJing. It was on my 10th birthday. And the first record I believe I was cutting up was Hall & Oates. Now, before that, I did have a turntable, and I had two turntables, but they weren't the same brand. They were like, one was one brand and the other was another brand, and that was just to practice off of, just to get a feel of things. So I didn't really get my first set until I was 10, and that was when my mother went out to a store and got them for me for my birthday.
Oh, all right. So then, were you just playing around with it? Who did you get formal lessons on how to mix, or how did you pick up the art, learn the art, start getting really good at it?
So I was just talking to someone earlier this morning, and I was saying that, because someone was saying to me I should run a DJ school, and I'm like, well, you know, I, I was saying to say, I never, I don't know how I feel about that, because to answer your question, self-taught myself how to mix. So no one really taught me anything as far as mixing, scratching, and cutting. All I did was I listened to what people like Red Alert and Marley and all those guys were doing, and then I somehow figured it out by myself and was like, oh, so that's how they did it. So no one came over to the house. No one said, you want to cut it like this, cut it like that. Everything was self-taught.
Everything was self-taught. All right.
Yes.
And so when did you start going out there and DJing for other people? I know you spent a lot of time in your room doing it, throwing different records here, mixing that, trying different experiments, because you're self-taught, and that's what us self-taught people do. Uh,
Yes.
Absolutely. But when did you say, you know what, I'm ready. I want to go DJ a party. I want to go DJ, I don't know, a nursery school or something. When did you go out and start doing your first gigs?
I think my very first gig, thinking back now, I think my very first gig was when I was in 5th grade, and I had to DJ my school's holiday party, my classroom's holiday party. And I brought a whole bunch of records into the classroom. This was when I was using vinyl. See, for all the DJs out there, I wasn't using CDs or Serato, which is, for those of you that don't know, the computer program. I had like maybe one or two, like one crate of records, and I was 12. So I didn't really I practiced for about a year or two before I got comfortable. And then I was uh I was 12 when I did my first gig. And then after that, my very, very, very first official gig, where it was like I was just on there, because like with my school gig, that was for like maybe an hour. But when I had my very, very, very first official gig, I was like 13. And that was when I was DJing at the barbershop I got my hair cut at.
Oh, DJ at your own barbershop. Okay.
Yes.
All right. And so then you started going from there, doing more and more events and parties and things like that.
Correct.
All right. Well, So now let's talk about this thing you mentioned. I have a lot of questions left, but I want to talk about this thing you mentioned, this thing that you call blindness. So we know that a lot of times people do things by looking at them, and especially something like DJing. You got you look, you see the crate, you see the record you want, you slap it on there, you start, So as a blind person, what has DJing been like? How were you able to adapt to becoming a DJ as a blind person?
Well, at first it wasn't. I'm not gonna say it wasn't easy, but I didn't know if I would get accepted because you know he's blind. What is he gonna do? And I know that a lot of times blind people, there's an assumption that blind people aren't capable of doing certain things, which I hate that assumption. But I was afraid that I wasn't necessarily going to be accepted into the game. But however, then I later on learned that there was a blind DJ out of Philly. So for me, I learned that it was kind of difficult at first, but then it was like, all right, this is easy. So it turned out to be easy for me to be blind DJ.
So the actual process of DJing itself, was that hard for you, or the moving the records around, looking to see what next record you wanted to put? How was the whole actual DJing process itself for you as a blind person?
It was hard at first because when I was younger, I even think some sighted DJs have this issue, but maybe not as frequently as a beginner blind DJ. When I was younger and I used to have a record and I used to play, I used to bump the needle, and my mother and I used to have to go to the DJ store almost once or twice a month. I can't exactly remember, to get a lot of needles, and it used to be hard for me because I would always bump the needle and I would never mean to. But in the beginning, being that I couldn't see the needle, I used to, always bump the needle, and I would always, like, sometimes if I was playing a record, like I'm gonna pull a record out now, not that you can see it, but if I was playing a record, I would put it on the wrong side, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. So sometimes, like, it's hard to tell what side my record is on, but over time, I eventually got used to it, and it became like second nature to me.
All right. Well, you mentioned briefly about being accepted into the DJ world as a blind DJ. So, talk a little bit more about that thing. What happens when you do a gig and you let them know you're blind, or what happens in any of these situations where you have to disclose this thing that you call blindness?
Well, I think for them, I think when people who are sighted find out that I'm blind and I'm DJing, I think two questions come on. No, maybe three things happen. When before they hear me, I think they're like, well, how does he know what he's doing? Like, how does he know? Number two, when they hear, there's no way this guy can be blind because he's too good. It's like when people get around me, it's like they forget that I'm blind because of the type of personality that I have. So, like I said, the first thing I think they're like is, wow, this is amazing. Like, how does he know what he's doing? Like, is he, number two, it's amazing with his blindness, like of how good he's playing. And then number three, they come up to me and say, you're an inspiration for what you do, which is humbling. Yes, it's humbling. But at the same time, it's like, if a sighted person can do this, I can do it too. So but it is humbling to hear people say that it's inspiring for me. I'm inspiring to them to do what I do.
Were there ever any awkward situations related to your blindness where someone was they couldn't be comfortable with it and it affected your DJing, at least for that event?
I don't think I've had any I don't ever recall having any awkward situations where people were like not comfortable. Now if they did, they never said it to my face, but no, I don't think so. No.
Cool. All right. So, what's going on with your future? What do you plan for the future for yourself when it comes to DJing? Are you going to continue doing gigs? Are you going to branch out to more parts of the country? How are you going to expand into other things? What's your future look like?
Once COVID clears up, I definitely would like to get back into the swing of things with gigs. I also wouldn't mind doing a little bit of producing because there's a lot of records that I hear. I'm like, why haven't they been sampled? And there's a lot of artists that I would like to work with. So I definitely wouldn't mind doing some producing. As far as, other parts of the country goes, I mean, whatever opportunity comes the way, if I have to branch out to a place to do what I have to do, then I'll do it. I mean, I wouldn't mind, you have to be a risk taker in this game, You have to be a risk taker.
So you're willing to go out there and just take those chances and plunge into things, and
only if it sounds legitimate and right to me.
Absolutely. So you are on a radio station now. You've been on a few radio stations before, both internet and otherwise. But let's talk about where you are currently. Where can you be heard?
Well, right now I'm on a radio station based out of Rochester, New York, called Flex 92.3 WFLX. I have a show called No Rules Radio. I come on every Friday from 8 to 10 p.m. and I play everything from hip hop, house music, pop, rock, reggae, break beats, funk, soul. I play. I stick to my regular format, and I'm having fun doing it. I think this Friday coming up is my second show. So, I just started last week on, when was last Friday? The 18th, I think. Yeah, I started on the 18th last Friday, and the response was pretty good. So I'm on Flex 92.3 every Friday night from 8 to 10 with No Rules Radio.
That's cool. And you've been on other stations before that, and sometimes you go on your own page live and do a mix like that. So people definitely want to hear you tune into that. So speaking of that,
I don't mean to cut you, but they're shutting down. I don't know if you know this, but they're shutting down DJs from going live on Facebook on October 1st. So
okay.
My last Facebook Live was the 13th of September, I think. The 13th or the 12th. The 12th of September. Yes, it was the 12th.
And this is probably because you're DJing, you're mixing people's songs, and Facebook is kind of worried about copyright and things like that.
Yes.
All right. Well, hopefully you'll end up on other radio stations aside from the one you're on now. You were on them in the past, and we're going to see if we can get you on some in the future.
Well, I wouldn't mind branching out. I definitely would look forward to it. So, I'd be all down for it.
So what advice would you give other DJs who are coming up, blind or not, on how to succeed in becoming a DJ, how to really get good and things like that? What attitudinal things would you say to them? What tips, what advice, guidance?
Well, I'd say first, stay humble, stay true to yourself and have fun while you're doing it, because the moment you get arrogant, the moment you think you're better than the next man, that's when you start to fall. So first and foremost, stay humble, have fun, and stay true to yourself. Number two, if you're blind, know the crowd. Blind or not, really, know your crowd. If you're blind, listen to how the crowd reacts when you're throwing the record on. But if you're not blind, know your crowd. I can't stress that enough. If you pay attention to your crowd and you pay attention to what they like, and you come back with that punch, then go for it. As far as equipment goes, get the best equipment that's comfortable for you. So honestly, stay in your comfort zone as a DJ. That's what it all boils down to.
Stay in that comfort zone. And yes, knowing your audience is very important, and that's for any presentation, whether it's being a DJ, whether it's being a speaker or a comedian, whatever it is. You've got to know who you're standing in front of, who is your audience, and that will get you far if you when I say speak to who you're speaking to.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So true.
Well, DJ Mixmash, because do you have any website or anything where people can say what's up to you, hear more about you, find out more about you and the things that you're doing?
If you want to reach out to me for any, bookings virtually. If you would like to send me any records, if you're an artist, because now that I'm on the radio, part of No Rules Radio is to break records. And if you have a record that's hot, if you just want to say, hey, how you doing? If you want to, do whatever, you can reach me on Instagram at TherealDJMixmash, The Real DJ Mixmash, and that is one word. Twitter is DJ Mixmash and the number 97. Facebook is TherealDJ Mixmash. Again, Instagram and Facebook are The Real DJ Mixmash. Facebook is spaced out. However, Instagram is one word. And Twitter is DJ Mixmash and the number 97.
All right, DJ Mixmash in the house. All right, thank you for coming on the program here and telling us all about what you do and where we can hear you.
No problem.
All right, thanks for being on the show. I wish I had a brand new car to award you.